I just wanted to bring you all up to date on something that we've been working on for a while. Last January, we wrote our first story. No, you wrote your first story. We wrote our first letter to the governor, asking for information on the budget cuts by department, by program, so we could get the information that we needed to know whether additional cuts were still needed or whether we had reached our goals. And also we were hearing from constituents about what programs were being cut, and we weren't getting any information from the governor's office. So the governor referred that letter to the budget director, Chris Rule, and I finally got a response, I guess in February or something like that when we were in session. And basically he said there is no such list, that there is no list compiled, and we are not going to compile a list. So my question at the time was, if there's no list, how can you make any decisions? I mean, if you don't know what cuts are being made, how can you make any decisions about future cuts? And whether they should remain in place or whether we should make additional cuts. So we let it slide for a while, asked for additional information from the budget director, and none of that was forthcoming. We did a letter to him in April and set a deadline of May 21st and asked for a response by May 21st. I will leave it to you to decide why there is not a list, but my thinking on it is that either the office is totally incompetent or they're keeping secrets that they don't want us to know. The public has a right to this information. The public has a right to know what allocations have been held back, what distributions are not going to be made, hopefully prior to the fact when those distributions are withheld. And I believe that we as elected representatives of the public have a right to know on their behalf how those decisions are being made. The governor is talking about across-the-board cuts from each department. He's up to 15% now, but we all know that that there are a lot of programs. Some departments run hundreds of programs, and so the cuts are not across the board in terms of the program. Some programs are being cut more than 15%. Some programs are being cut less, and there must be a methodology for how those cuts are being made. In Chris Rule's response to the governor's letter that I sent in January, he suggested that we contact each department and get the information by department since they didn't have a list. I've not done that yet, but today we are sending a letter to each department since we got no response from the budget director. And so we're sending that letter out to the departments that you see there, asking for not only a list of cuts, but also potential cuts, proposed cuts by program, not just by department. For instance, we know that although most departments are being cut across the board by 15%, public television was cut by 50%. And we know the food bank allocation was 100% cut. So we know that there are differences, and we believe that the public has a right to that information. And so after the last couple of weeks, I've decided that this is kind of a trend for the executive branch, for this administration, kind of a culture of secrecy that we're experiencing here. There were some stories recently about IEDC and the number of jobs that had been so-called created, but in fact those jobs had not been created, and we can't get any accountability, any information out of IEDC on how tax dollars are being spent to create jobs. And so I think those are two really big examples of this culture of secrecy. It's really a matter of trust between the executive branch and the legislative branch, and also between the executive branch and all of the people of the state of Indiana. This is information that we all deserve to have. You deserve to have it. I deserve to have it, because we all represent the public. And this is information the public should have, because in this democracy, it seems to me that accountability of government and government officials is of utmost importance. And if we can't get the information that we need, then we all have to be suspicious, we all have to guess, we have to make estimates. That's not a way to run the government. So we're making this request of department heads, and I hope this time the governor insists that the information be gathered. Representative Crawford, I think in the packet that you have there, some of the letters from Representative Crawford, which were also ignored by the budget director, are included. They made some calls to department heads, emails, and so on. They didn't get any information at all that was usable. And so we're going to make another effort and try once more.